Hey everyone, it's Tatiana. I'm really excited to be doing this panel with you all today. My buddy Mike should be here pretty soon. He's having some technical difficulties. He should be here momentarily. So we're here today to talk about Magic the Gathering and its more recent connection with Marvel and some of the other kind of comic and fandom pieces. So I want to go ahead and bring up the slideshow, and Mike can jump in when he gets here. All right. So, and if any of you have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to bring those. Oh, here's Mike.
Hello.
Take that out for a second. Sorry, Mike, to stress you out. Mike thought it was in 30 minutes, so he's here now.
That's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah. All right. So, Mike, I just was introducing it, and I just brought up the slideshow. So we are good to go.
That's wonderful to hear. So, obviously, you did introductions for yourself already.
Oh, actually, I didn't. I kind of forgot about that because I was busy thinking about you. Okay, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself first?
Sure. So, I'm Fourthos Mike, i.e. Mike Linnemann. I live in Minneapolis, and I do a lot of things in the art world. I guess I'm an art broker to about 30-ish artists, depending on the project and things they're working on for the Magic the Gathering community. Artists generally stay in that realm, but deviate a little bit from here or there. Whenever there's a large Magic art show, since we did the first one in 2017, I've been part of every single one. From here to Tokyo to the Magic Cons and so on and so forth. I wrote for Cool Stuff Inc., which is like a big gaming website, for about a decade. And right now I'm working on a few art shows behind the scenes. We're pitching some museums and doing some other things of the sort to really raise that profile of illustration, which, as always, since ever, we always need to be working on. So as of now, it's working on how do we get this Marvel Magic thing more visible than it currently is. And by day, I do development work or nonprofit work for fundraising for social causes. But we're here to talk art. So with me, co-host, is Tatiana. Tatiana, who are you? What do you do?
Thanks, Mike. I lost my brain today. It's my first time hosting on StreamYard, so I got a little discombobulated. So many of you know that I am, so my name's Tatiana Dykes. I am the Director of Events for CAF. So you'll all will be seeing me a lot, possibly more than you want to, but hopefully as much as you want to. And as far as Magic goes, I've been playing Magic for a really long time. Started playing when I was a kid, off and on, and I've been playing for quite a long time solid now. I'm also an art rep. I rep a couple Magic artists. And yeah, this is really, really exciting. So when this all started, we wanted to make sure that we were bridging those two worlds as much as possible. So, and then we'll talk a little bit at the end too about OAX. Any of you coming interested in Magic stuff, you'll be excited about that. So let me pull up the slideshow.
Here we go.
All righty. So, and at any point, like I said, if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to pop those into the chat. So, Mike, do you want to give us a little bit of background about Magic?
So Magic is the game. We all think about the 90s, right? You know, the Satanic Panic and all that hullabaloo that happened. So obviously it's one of the very first collectible card games that came into being. And really what separates it from an Uno of the sort, or it's the art. Each unique game piece has unique artworks, all commissioned, all illustrated, from digital to even to at the beginning. In 1993, there were actually a digital card in that set. So it's always been a mix of this traditional digital kind of mix. The gameplay is very math oriented. It's very complex as each year has gone on. The art has begotten more into award-winning categories. About late 90s, it really started to get recognized by the Chesleys, as well as Spectrum honors to gold awards and so on and so forth. And now, basically, every time there's a gaming illustration award, Magic tends to be in the mix. Not always wins, but it tends to be in the mix. And the story has been continuous. So beyond the game itself, there's a lot of people who appreciate the novels and the web fiction that's free and so on and so forth. The game is bigger than it's ever been, and largely that's due to a few things, which we'll get into. It's about 50 million people, and it's growing with a previewed Netflix show which will not be live action. It'll be animated. They do expect that to be quite a bit bigger. Basically, everyone used to play Magic, or at least dabbled in our little community. And as of right now, Magic used to have more world languages. Obviously, English, Italian, German, French, Spanish, traditional Chinese, both types of Chinese and Japanese. And it just discontinued recently, 3 languages in Russia, Korea, and Portuguese, but largely it was Brazil. I mean, that's really where it is. So the game is changing quite rapidly from its original card back here that looks very early 90s. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is some of the new collaborations and differences that change it from what you thought of just wizards and things of the past. So that sum it up pretty decent, Tatiana?
Yeah. Mike, I wanted to ask if you can let the crowd know briefly what the Chesleys and Spectrums awards are, because the comic folks might not know.
Sure. So in illustration, especially in this fantasy wizards and dragons and things, they call the formal art term is not sci-fi fantasy. That's what you used to call it in like the 70s and 80s and 90s. They now call it imaginative realism. That's technically the fine art term for it. So these sort of groups tried to find some ways to elevate, to say which ones are the best ones in our field. And there used to be a book that came out every year. It still comes out, but there was more in the past, called Spectrum. And Spectrum is an art annual. You have to submit, costs a little bit of money. There's different categories like editorial, unpublished, gaming related, variety of different categories, and sculptural, dimensional as they call it. And Magic wasn't part of it for the first bunch of years in the 90s. They just didn't have any artworks that were submitted, didn't get in, so on and so forth. These days, they're always in. Like you go through the book and like the top, the silver award or the gold award, Magic is always considered in that specific category. And that's one award. The other award is the Chesleys, which are through the, the World Fantasy Con, which is largely for writers, nonprofit writers, fiction writers, and it's at this convention. And they vote on all these awards. And one of them is like Best Art Director of the Year, because they're thinking more like book covers, right? Because, a lot of those things in the 70s, pulp, animation, anything of that sort were, from an art director. They've now added categories like gaming illustration or Best Artist of the Year. So you have these two things are really what jockey to find, like, okay, if you've won a Chesley for the best gaming illustration, if you've been submitted, that's a level. If you've made Spectrum and Chesley, that's a level. And Wizards of the Coast actually pays for a lot of these to be submitted. So they pick like 20, 30 images, and it's like $30 a piece or something. And they submit it on behalf of the artist. So the artist doesn't even have to do it. Wizard says, no. It's important for us to win awards. It's really important for us to be seen as quality. We're going to pay this on their behalf, which is actually a pretty nice thing that they don't talk about very often. And because of that, awards have gotten better. Quality has gone up. Better artists have noticed this. And, all the things scale upward like a hockey stick. So those are the two main ones. There are a couple other ones, but nothing is near as prominent as those two.
I will point out that our very own Bill Cox also does his own. He owns Infected by Art, which is an annual, it's similar idea, annual award, and then people submit and then a book comes out. So I was really excited that several of my artists were featured in the book this year, and I was also on the jury for the book this year. So that's another really fun one. There were so many good Magic pieces in that one as well this year. So just thanks for that. I just wanted people to kind of be aware, because that's not something that's really around in the comic art world.
Okay. So, Tal, do you want to take it from here? So this is Black Lotus. Anybody who knows anything about Magic knows Black Lotus. It's the kind of the iconography image for Magic the Gathering, done by the late Chris Rush. There have been, several different versions of different things, and the Lotus itself has been used in a lot of different cards over the years. But the original printing, alpha printing of the card, I mean, we have examples of it now selling in the millions. So it's a pretty big deal. The only other card we've ever seen sell in the millions was the One Ring, but that's because that card was one of one.
and a musician bought it. So that when big celebrities play Magic. So so this is kind of the most recognizable image for kind of old school Magic. And so we just have a few examples of art over the years. This is like Mike's favorite. So, really high level fantasy level art. This is, you want to talk about this piece at all, Mike?
Sure. So the Lotus is the thing that leaves Magic. So World of Warcraft had the Black Lotuses in the game. They did a tribute to Chris Rush. It's kind of the thing that leaves Magic. And we've yet to have things that have really gotten beyond the game itself into other properties. But the quality's been there for some time. So this came out in 2002. Made in 2001. It's Cartographer by Donato Giancola. And it really was the first example where people said, oh, this art is very good. Like, this art is quality. Prior to this, I mean, there were artworks that players liked, but there wasn't a uniform, oh, that's the best art of that stuff. That just is. And there was almost a turning point where, if you defaulted to say there needs to be a woman in a thing, it was always a white lady. If there was a lot of early descriptions, was give me a black knight, and it was just random what was part of it. Cartographer started that more complex route they headed down. Art directors changed, and now it's to what it is today. This piece is known. We know where it is. This is one of the ones that we want to get to a museum one day, because so many players of the pre-modern period, which is that like late 90s, early 2000s, play this card in decks, and it's really synonymous, known as, oh, that's a quality piece of work, because maps, Latino woman, quality done by an artist of renown. So that's kind of our first example into like looking at capital A art of Magic this time.
And as we know, we've seen some of those types of changes in comic book art as well. So Magic art, similarly to comic book art, for several years was not taken very seriously. And so you didn't have that kind of high level illustration. The history of Magic is much shorter, but some of the same things have happened in that time period, as has happened in comic art.
Quality was the big thing. I mean, they knew of great artists back then. They just didn't have the budget. Like that 1993 sets, I mean, they were calling up college students and giving them $50. Like, Michael Whalen was very much a professional back then, and they just couldn't afford them. Now, if you want to be in this area of like, hey, I can do good realism, I can do conceptual things, which you can see here is one of the better recent ideas of a conceptual piece. And not conceptual in like Rothko at a contemporary art museum, but conceptual in that it's still an illustration. It serves a purpose. It has meaning behind it. But then the artist taking it to say, okay, I'm going to take the prompt and then I'm going to zoom out and say, how can I make this say something as well? And this is Discover the Impossible by Ryan Pancoast. It's for the Kamigawa, the Return to Kamigawa set that we had. And it really showcases the difference, this neo-Kamigawa of blending of the old and the new, of digital and technology, but yet still having traditional roots, which, if you've been to somewhere like a Tokyo, or especially right outside of Tokyo, you see this blending of like high technology, high culture, late 21st century feel to a traditional grounding. So he kind of blended these two in one image, and this is one of those paintings that just took off, super expensive, and yet the card is not good. Like, the card is not playable really anywhere. But
yeah, this was one of those the art transcends, because it sold for 5 times what it should have sold for, based on if you just looked at the card,
if not 10 times more.
Yeah.
So this is one of those that we'll probably try to get into an exhibition one day, and it's a little larger than average. But this doesn't seem like Magic. It doesn't look like Magic. It's not what people concept of Dragon. It's, oh, what are you trying to say here? And that's the more Magic of the now, whereas people's perception of when they started playing Lord of the Pit, Ship and Dragon, is still stuck in a lot of collectors' minds. I want a dragon, I want an angel, but then they see something like this and they're like, oh, no, that's actually what I want.
So like between the Black Lotus and Ryan's piece here, that's almost 30 years. So there's a huge, Magic was this fantasy art, right? And that's kind of leading us into what we're going to be talking about with Universes Beyond and Marvel. But it's changed a lot over the years because fans have changed, right? And you talked about like representation and things a few minutes ago, and it's, you want to be able to speak to different types of collectors, different types of players, get different types of players, and this is part of that.
Yeah, which filters into the now.
Yeah.
We've seen Jason Rainville. This is fully digital, and none of us expected this. This is a kind of not really a super playable card. You play it a little bit for a short amount of time, about a month or two, and Jason Rainville, who's from a rural Canadian guy way up north, said, "I want to use Magic as my stepping stone. I want to do the Carlo Ortiz, where I use Magic and then I transcend into I'm working concept art for Marvel." And he said, I'm going to take this know-nothing card. It's not a rare. It's not super valuable. And I'm going to go and make a historical battle allegory painting of today, which
this is like classical painting hanging in a museum level art.
Yeah, it's no different than like a French Revolution piece. But you're like, this is for done like dragons and wizards. Like, what the heck? But
it's printed this big on a piece of cardboard.
2 inches by 3 inches. But it allows for this permeation to say, listen, if you want to say something, if you want to bring heritage in, if you want to give a nod in the wing to the past, Magic allows for that. Whereas like a Yu-Gi-Oh, it doesn't. You got to make this thing and backgrounds need to be minimal. Magic encourages this sort of thing, but how much time can you take to finish this knowing the cost of the illustration prompt? But if you have time, sometimes people swing for the fences, which we see with the next piece actually too. Right away. We saw this at Spectrum. As I mentioned, Spectrum was this art annual. They did a live show, Spectrum Live, and that was in Kansas City for 2 years. And he had this on his wall when it came out. And it was not for sale immediately because he knew right away. This is Surgical Extraction by Steve Badin. He knew right away. It's like, listen, I'm calling into 1970s metal album covers. I'm channeling sci-fi imagery of my past and using realism of today with the perfectly painted metal, the wisps on the burnt black spinal cord. Like, the quality is unreal of this, and it's not real big. It's only like 11 by 14 inches. And this is the one that when I've talked to 2 museums, when I've showed them this, they're like, this is the piece we want in the show. By far, this is the one they want in the show. Steve won't lend it yet because he doesn't want to lose it. He knows how valuable it is. But this will be the piece that in his estate, when he works on his will, this is the one that he wants to get accession into a museum. The question is, where? That's the big answer on that. And this represents an entire world, entire plane of Magic. Those pieces tend to do really well. They encapsulate the idea of Magic. You go different settings, different sets. You are the planeswalker. You are casting the spells. That's why you have the deck. And each of those worlds you visit, some of the better artworks are ones that encapsulate the entire set in one image. And this is a world of metal where there's a fusion of metal and flesh. Just the same as we can see this Kamigawa one, where it shows this fusion of the old and the new Japan. Those tend to do really, really well if you can show entirely a story with one image. It's only happened a couple times. Mardu Heartpiercer would be the other one. Those are very, very hard images to get. They're very valuable images, and often they're not planned. They're usually emerge from an artist thinking, oh, here's a good idea. I'm going to do this. So that's some of the great ones for Works for Magic. Universes Beyond, though, Tatiana. Explain to us why we're here and how did this begin?
Yeah, so to kind of piggyback on the idea that the game, even at its core of what Magic is the story and planeswalkers and the different planes, that's developed over time. But there was this realization that there are so many fans of Magic who like other things, and those things could work really well in Magic. And then also there's a lot of people who maybe don't play Magic, but maybe they would play Magic if there was cool cards that they liked. So Wizards of the Coast created the imprint called Universes Beyond as part of their product line. And when Universes Beyond first started, it started as a secret lair, which essentially is not part of a set, but kind of a special release It's the way they did the Marvel cards that we'll talk about in a few minutes. But the very first Secret Lair that ever came out for Universes, it's Universes Beyond now. It wasn't even called that at the time. But the very first one ever was Walking Dead, which is a comic book. Yes, they used images from the TV show, but we know that that was a comic book first. I mean, it's a very popular series. It's been around for a really long time. So the intention of the type of fans who would read Marvel and DC has been there from the beginning. For any of you who play some of like the Marvel like card games, it's similar to the Versus system with what they use with the card games. Some other really notable brands that people in this group would have heard of is Warhammer 40K. They did some specialty like pre-made decks. And then the Lord of the Rings set was huge. That was the first time with Universes Beyond that we saw an entire set release with, you know, all of the characters that we know and love from the original book and the stories and the movies and everything. So we've been talking for years about, oh, wouldn't it be so cool if they did Marvel? Oh, wouldn't it be so cool if, you know, they did, you know, insert whatever here. We found out last year that they were doing Marvel. It was just incredibly exciting. So, you know, I think really sky's the limit. It's just whoever's willing to work with Wizards of the Coast, who is owned by Hasbro. So, you know, big company. So it's just whoever's willing to work with them. And if Disney's willing to work with them, then, you know, that says a lot. Really, that opens up a whole lot of things.
Exactly right. I mean, everybody has their short list of, I wish this was a Universes Beyond. I wish this was a Secret Lair, this limited time drop, and you have to buy it and it kind of disappears. You know, there's the serious to the silly. People want Peppa Pig, which is kind of neat, kind of wild to, you know, Hellboy would be really, really cool. Would Mike Mignola work with them? And a lot of these things have been worked on. I mean, they just announced the SpongeBob Secret Lair, which is wild. But if there's demand for it and if the people want it, you know, they found it's actually really successful and it allows people to learn to play the game. That's pretty fun, actually. Yeah.
And I agree, Mikhail. The food tokens in the Lord of the Rings, they just actually make you hungry.
They're good.
They're pretty good. They are pretty good. All right. So speaking of Ryan, so Ryan was on a couple weeks ago. So thanks again to Ryan for coming on. He painted that Kamigawa piece that Mike was just talking about, but he also painted one of the pieces for the Marvel Secret Lair. So this is not the only time that we're working with Marvel. It's just the first time, which is really exciting. So there were, the way the Secret Lair works is it's its own website. And they're just kind of one-time releases. So they're not, you know, regular releases you go and you buy at your game shop. Like the Lord of the Rings set, you could go in and buy at your game shop.
Right,
you could buy them. I'm sorry, Mike?
You could buy it at Target even.
Yes. Any Amazon, Target, any major retailers. Secret Lair is directly through Wizards on their own special website. So anything that you see anywhere else is secondary market. So they decided to do the first Marvel drop as a Secret Lair, and it was based on 5 different characters. So it was 5 different sets of cards. So the first set was all around Wolverine. The second one was Iron Man. Third one was Storm. Fourth one was Black Panther, and the 5th one was Captain America, which you see. I love Ryan doing those images. And then each one had some different cards. So it included new cards. So for example, the Captain America card is a brand new card that does new things that we haven't had before. But some of the other cards in that release are reprints, right? So with comics, it would be like having a reprint of a comic you like with a different cover. And that's essentially all that is. So it does the same things. It reads the same. It's just a different art for it. And the other huge thing with the Marvel Secret Lair is this is the very first time ever anything in Universes Beyond had traditional artwork that was allowed to be sold. They were not allowed to do that before. So that's huge, huge, huge.
And a lot of these TCGs, these trading card games, these living card games, these LCGs, it is not uncommon to have originals, but there's often clauses in there that if George Lucas wants it, he gets it, and or he is allowed to purchase it from you, or everything you make is owned by the company, like a Pokemon situation. So being able to have your original and sell it is more of a newer phenomenon from some card games, but obviously if Lucas would pass on it and you're making for a Star Wars card game, you could then sell the originals. But that wasn't really the norm. Often it's these universes beyond, they chose digital artists for that reason. So they wouldn't have to go around this. Can we deal with originals? What do you do with them? Do you have to keep them? Can you not sell them? It's like, oh, we'll just use a digital artist. We just don't have to worry about those things. Until a lot of these traditional artists like Ryan Pankos or Victor Adame say, we can paint really good. I want to work on those things. How do I do that? And that's when they started working behind the scenes. Really credit to Wizards on this, because this was a couple people that I know from behind the scenes working on it to say, listen, how do we make it that they could sell their originals? Because there is some precedent with the Marvel masterpieces that Upper Deck did, that, Dan Dos Santos and Dave Palumbo made these original paintings and sold them such that, like the Marvel community could purchase these. And if they didn't have that for Marvel, that would be weird. Right, it would be odd or unusual, and you wouldn't get great artists like Ryan, because he doesn't work digitally. You just wouldn't be able to work on the project at all. So that actually worked really, really great, and we're really happy to see that, because then it opens the door to future universes beyond to have traditionals, which we absolutely want.
Yeah, and it's that's how you get this like Marvel masterpieces level detail of illustration. And I'm sure a lot of the people in the chat know, but in comics, it was many decades where comic book artists were also not allowed to sell their originals. They all went back to the company, and it wasn't until Neil Adams really, really pushed that that completely changed the entire industry and added in that secondary market piece of things to help with income situation. So it's not surprising to see it going through a similar pattern, because it's something that's already happened in comics. So this is the Wolverine set. So the bottom right one is Wolverine Best There Is. That's the painting that Victor Adame Minguez did, and that one sold at auction for $55,000. So there really is a culmination here of comic fans, Magic fans, card fans, all coming together to get a price like that, because you don't get prices like that in Magic art unless it's a really special older piece. You just don't see that. Even really good character stuff doesn't ever sell for that much. That was a really, really good sale. This is the Storm set. So the bottom right on there is Magali. So that was another traditional painting, and that one sold for $30,000. So $30,000. That also sold. We'll talk about the art market in a minute here too. So here's the Captain America set. So that top left is Ryan's piece. The bottom middle was the Chris Ron piece. That is a reprint of a card. So I mentioned some of the reprints. So that's a kind of an action card. It's not a character card, which is why it's not quite as front and center with the character like the Captain America card is.
So pricing on this, Ryan sold, if you go back to that, Ryan sold, mid-20s, 20,000, 26,000, 25, 26,000. And then Chris's was, let me double check that. That's
teens. It was in the teens somewhere.
Yeah, I think it was like 11 or so. So none of this is approachably like, oh, it's $2,000. It's the synergy. It's Marvel fans and Magic fans. And if you assumed, oh, it's ink, there's two different people working on a piece, not the case here. It's one artist making the whole thing. It's more similar to the Marvel masterpieces thing. That's really how to categorize these. And they're very public, the sales. Some of the Marvel masterpieces were quick or behind the scenes or offers. These were out in the open, very, very, even if they were in a private group. It was a public sale, and when people saw them, they told each other about it.
So here's the Black Panther set. So bottom left was Jake Murray. That one sold to a buy now pretty much immediately for $15,000. And then the one next to it's the Black Panther that Tyler Jacobson did. That one's the legendary creature one. That sold for 27.
No, I think it was 30. I think that was the.
Was it also? It was in there, kind of near the Magali one.
So, so not all of these are traditionals, as we can see, but people have been demanding it. Once they saw these, well, I would have loved if that one was painted. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing in the future we're going to see probably more because the demand is there. And here's Iron Man.
And so the top right is the one that Bud Cook did, and that one sold on the art market for $9,500, I think. So none of the sales were bad. I mean, they were all amazing, even with prices these days. So, so these sold out like instantly. It was the website did a whole crash thing, one of those kind of situations. So I unfortunately was not able to get any, but a lot of people did. So did you get any, Mike?
I did not. I got 0. I got bumped out too.
Carl, did you get some? I know you're in the chat. You let us know if you got some.
Yeah.
So that's just the tip of the iceberg with us seeing more crossover with some of these larger franchises. And I mean, there's so much they can do with Marvel. So we know for sure. Yep. See, Carl got some. I knew he did.
Hey.
Carl, you broke the website, didn't you? I know it was Carl. Carl did it. So in 2025, we have a few sets coming. I'm actually just going to jump to that slide. So Wizards does these kind of like year ahead looks, and here's the dates for the next set. So Aether Drift and Tarkir Dragonstorm are both the next two sets, and those are both just based in regular Magic Worlds, the planes that we've been to previously. And then for fans kind of in other things in other genres, we have Final Fantasy, and I'll show some of that in a minute as well. That's coming out in June. I do not. What's Edge of Eternities, Mike? I forget. Do you remember?
Edge of Eternities. That's the space opera set that's coming out.
That's right. So that's still that's a Magic World.
That's still a Magic World, yeah.
Yeah. So SpiderMan, the dates to be announced, we're kind of probably guessing somewhere third quarter based on the way this looks. And then there's a set coming out at the end of the year that we don't know what it is yet.
Well, I mean, most of us don't know what it is.
Most of us don't know. We do not know what it is. So the other thing I wanted to mention that is huge is that Universes Beyond previously has only been allowed in certain formats. So Magic, because it's been around for 30 years, has different formats you can play. So there's the vintage format where you play all the way back. You can have that Black Lotus in your deck. You can only have one, but you can have it in there. And then there's Legacy, which is pretty similar to Vintage. A lot of people don't play those because there's a huge financial curve to them if you don't already have the cards. But then you start seeing a lot of people playing at Modern. And Modern's kind of like the last 25-ish years ago of cards. And Universes Beyond used to all just be Modern. You couldn't play it in any of the newer stuff. So newer is like Pioneer Standard. You had to play it in Modern, or you could play it in Commander. Commander is a singleton type of format. So I won't go too far down that road, but it's huge now because before you could only play Universes Beyond in very specific types of sets. And some of those sets some of those formats being things that not everybody plays. And by expanding it out now, you can go down to your local game shop on any given day of the week, and your opponent can be playing, SpiderMan by this time next year. So that's really, really exciting. It makes it something that we're going to see more often and not just like a random, in somebody's Commander deck or other things like that.
Right. So the first thing you should ask yourself right away is, okay, well, you just had a Marvel Secret Lairs. That's these limited drops. That sounds fine. That's Marvel, all the things. The set coming up here isn't Marvel. It's Spider-Man. So what does that mean? Well, it means that they're not choosing all of Marvel in one set. So
Mm-hmm.
you should allude to, so could you have an X-Men set? Potentially. Could you
Mm-hmm.
have any variety of Marvel properties that is more specific? Totally. Could some be secret layers? Could some be pre-constructed decks like the 40K, where it's like, I'm going to be one Chaos God, and that's the deck, or it's going to be a whole set, a whole world, like Lord of the Rings. Depends. But that opportunity, signals by us seeing Spider-Man, and it opens up the opportunity to say, whoa, 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 whoa. This look ahead for 2025 is similar to how Marvel does. There could be some things that align perfectly where, a new Daredevil series shows up on Netflix. Okay, Magic could coincide with that, with the Secret Lair drop for that week. Obviously, that's not happening. I don't know of any of those things, but those are now possible, that you could pick and choose anytime you want, which is kind of exciting, that there could be a greater synergy of both the things happening in real time, almost like you get a Pokemon card in a Pokemon movie, but larger scale.
And the thing that's cool too with all that potential is we have in Magic, we have a lot of those big crossover, huge stories where all these different characters from different places come together, just like you see like in Marvel, like, if you think about Endgame and those movies, that could potentially happen if we have some of these individual sets come out. Then maybe you have sets leading up to a big storyline, overarching storyline. So that there's a lot of really potentially exciting things that could come out of that.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to show a few. So these were super early spoilers that Wizards of the Coast shared for the Final Fantasy set.
Yeah, these previews were at one of the large Magic cons, and they previewed, okay, Final Fantasy is coming, ha ha ha. So we know this is in our near future. Super exciting. Obviously, we all have the same question: is a mono part of it? We don't know. That isn't known yet. But everything you could think of, that's like, okay, all right, they got some good things. I think this is going to be all right. And it kind of calmed the fears of it was going to be too Disney-fied or too cheesy or too ham-fisted. And it's like, oh, okay, this is actually cool. This looks neat.
So, Mikhail, yes, we'll talk about that at the end.
Yep.
And yeah, I had to stop on the Moogles. I'm a big Moogle fan.
Loves the Moogles.
So we'll be seeing more of that soon, since that's in June. But we probably won't get more than a couple spoilers here and there, and then spoilers usually start in earnest about a month before the set. So that was just kind of a, coming soon. We have not seen any spoilers for Spider-Man yet.
Nothing yet.
So, since you all are bringing this up, so when the Marvel Secret Lairs got announced, people started reaching out and saying, hey, this is really cool. I want to learn how to play Magic now. So, Carl and I and a couple other people are working on putting together some programming at OA Expo to teach people how to play Magic, or to refresh people on playing Magic. So Magic is an easy game to start, like to learn to play, but it's incredibly hard to master, quote unquote. And I would say, really, I mean, you can't. Like, there's so many cards. There's like infinite. There was an article that came out a couple of years ago that said Magic is the most complicated card game that exists in the world. So it is an incredibly difficult game, but it is very easy to learn and start. So there's not a huge barrier between like just kind of getting there and starting to play, and then you just learn organically as you go. So there will be more information coming soon on that, but we are working on programming for that. We'll have decks and things that you can play. We'll have some giveaways, cards you can take with you. And we're really excited about that. So if you were not planning to come to OA Expo, you should come anyway. But that'll be a fun thing. We're looking at probably Saturday night. And then we may have some other things throughout the show as well. So really, really excited about that. And we'll roll out more information as we have it. So Mike, talk about the market.
All Sure. So we talked earlier about these things sold for kind of comical amounts in the past. It's not generally when you think of Magic that things are selling for tens of thousands. That's not what you would expect. We've actually worked really hard at that. And I say we because when I started writing in the past for cool stuff, ink, oh God, how many years ago? Almost 15 more years ago. Magic was still considered with a lot of the other TCGs, hundreds of dollars tops for originals. A couple of them were above the fold, but not too many. By writing on it, visibility, i.e. marketing, right? Talk about your 4 Ps, promotion turns out a pretty big one. We started talking about it more. People became more aware of it. Oh, you can buy these, mind you, because they thought, oh, these were all digital, or even if they are originals, I can't purchase them. Once we started making that available, a user group and a forum group left the main forum, shared a third-party site, then organized on Facebook. That first group didn't have great management, so we founded a new group, and I was one of the 4 founders of the MTG Art Market. I'm the only founder from that still, and from that group, Tatiana joined me as an admin, and we have a small admin team, and we have a moderating team of the MTG Art Market from nothing to, tens of thousands of people. And it became so popular, a lot of people that would have sketches that you could sell, or color studies, or ink studies, or all the other permeations of things that help go into creating a final painting, were also auctioned there. We looked at it and said, okay, well, let's focus in so people can find stuff easier. There's just too much going on. So we split the group, and the art market has all of the finals, the final paintings, the background and character. And we have one for inks, prelims, and repaints, which is everything in the process, from sketches to thumbnails to ink studies, transfer drawings, all of that stuff. And sometimes people want to repaint things for a variety of different reasons. Maybe something got lost in a flood, something destroyed, or maybe an artist just wants to paint one of them once a year because people keep yapping about a Black Lotus, and it's like, fine, I'll just make one. I'll make one a year. Leave me alone. So we made these 2 different groups, and we run them pretty good ship there. I'd say, Tatiana, I'd say pretty good. And they are closed to the public. So they're private groups. Really, it's because of spam. It's not to hide anything. It's not to hide things from your spouse of how much art you're buying. It really is a spam issue. So we set up controls on there. People need to say what their favorite artwork is, and then we let them in. And then, we validate people as they will, and then it is an open marketplace. And there is a lot of art that goes through. Easily 90 to 99% of all Magic art is sold literally in these groups. Occasionally there's an eBay piece, occasionally there's an in-person piece, but largely, if it's public, it's sold here. It just is for now. There are a couple exceptions, but if you're interested in seeing any of these Marvel works, they will pop up here. That most of them just will. Being sold off market can happen for Marvel stuff, but it probably won't. It's just so prominent that people will be posting and having open auctions. So did I miss anything?
I mean, all the auctions happened in the market. There was one piece that sold privately, separately, but that was not in one of the big pieces.
Yeah, there was one that did sell in that. So obviously with the SpiderMan set coming up, I don't know anybody that wants to get one of the villains. Give me a Rhino or something crazy, but if they make a Dr. Octopus, that'd be pretty neat, or a Mysterio would be pretty fun. So I'd say keep a look on those, join early, and it's a lot. Once those previews start, the spoilers, the previews of the SpiderMan set, you're gonna have to check it every day, because you don't sell it right away when it gets previewed. Usually you have to pay attention, and then you start checking every day to see when it pops up, how it pops up. You don't have to mash F5 or anything, but you will have to check in periodically.
And if you're, if you're ever wondering, hey, there's this artist I like, and how do I get things from them, and who is their art rep? You're always welcome to ask. It's good to know those things in advance, so that if a piece comes up from an artist you really like, you already know kind of what your avenues and channels are for things.
Totally.
So these are both on Facebook. So there's just the / group, and there's the info there on the bottom. They're both easy to find, but I wanted to put the actual URLs in there. When you join, you do need to make sure you answer the questions, or you will get declined. So make sure you answer them.
We'll always be willing to talk questions, and we'll have our contact info at the end. You can easily get a hold of Tatiana or myself and just ask questions. Hey, I'm looking for this. Hey, I heard your thing. And that's part of our job as admins, is we answer just a lot of questions every single day. So totally feel free to reach out anytime.
Yeah, so speaking of, you can find me on I'm slash or at TD Art Gallery on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Probably will be moving away from X at some point in the near future, but for right now, you can also email me at Tatiana@comicartfans.com. And Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so people always forget an N at the end of my name, so they often struggle to find it. So there's a magic categorized person that is into the art, and they call them the Vorthos people. So I go by Vorthos Mike nearly everywhere, and I do have an Instagram page for my art business, MGBD Art. So any auction I ever run, I always post there, and it's usually in the story on Instagram. So you can always see, oh, what auctions has Mike got going on? And you can just put that in, it'll show up in your story, and you can check it out. I put a list in there for Cool Stuff Inc. I have articles that span well over a decade that talk about all sorts of arty stuff in the magic world. And I've been getting more active on Blue Sky, simply because making some artist starter packs, how to find the magic artists, is really where I'm going to be dedicating a lot of my time for organizing. And I talk about auctions and art sales there all the time. So if you follow me there, or you follow Tatiana on any of her accounts, you'll hear us yapping about it, especially about some of this Marvel collaboration, because it's neat and fun. And you should hear about it because it's cool.
And if anyone in the chat has not already reached out and is interested in helping teach people, be part of that at OA Expo, definitely email me at the Tatiana@comicartfans.com. There was a question from Carl. Will there be MTG art displayed at OAX? So that's a very interesting question. I would say largely, like, we're not setting up a gallery of that, but you should come to the IAX panel tomorrow. And you're going to learn about some expansion and other things that we're doing with OAX that might lead to a lot more magic in the future. There might be some magic artists and stuff there this year. So I don't want to spoil everything, but go to that panel tomorrow. There'll be a lot more information, and we're going to see some really cool stuff coming up at OAX that's going to expand on what was already amazing this year.
Agreed.
All right. Any other questions, comments before we move on and let you guys jump onto the next panel?
It's really cool. Check out the Marvel art. It's really, really fun, this magic crossover, because the art is really, really great. I encourage everybody to look into it right away, especially if they've missed it. We're right at the point right before the news articles cover all the sales, so I encourage you all to dig in. Tatiana, this was fun. Under an hour. Not too bad.
Yeah, absolutely. There was no Cyclops, but if they do an X-Men set in the future, I don't know if they're going to or not, but if they did, I mean, Cyclops would absolutely have to be in an X-Men set.
We'll let the art directors know that we need some Cyclops. Let's get in there.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. We really appreciate it. Mike, I really appreciate you making the time to help out today. I hope you all enjoyed it. And look forward to seeing everyone at OAX and playing some Magic.
Very soon. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good rest of the day. Enjoy the next.